everyone, and welcome to Political Paradigm. I'm Terry Ikumi. We're counting weeks now to the 2023 general elections, and I'll have you know that beyond the presidential and governorship elections, you should be concerned about who represents you in your state assembly, as well as the National Assembly. Our focus today on Political Paradigm is on the National Assembly. My guest is aspiring to represent the FCT in the Senate under the platform of the Labour Party. My guest is Mrs. Ireti Kingibe. Welcome to Political Paradigm.
Thank you for having me.
How have you been? How's it been with the campaigns since it commenced? We're almost there now. So
yes, we are.
How do you feel?
Optimistic, but a bit tired because obviously it's tiring at the pace we've been going. And I'm looking forward actually to the elections.
Are you campaigning differently from what we're used to, or is it conventional?
No, I think it's a little bit different. For one thing, there's a lot less noise than we used to before. We used to campaign with a huge entourage, go in the streets, screaming and shouting. Now we're talking to people in smaller groups. There's also social media, there's digital campaigns. So it's more comprehensive, more 21st century than it used to be.
Now, since emerging as a candidate for the Labour Party, what have you done to increase your popularity?
Well, I have gone to the villages, I've gone into the area councils, talked to different groups, ethnic groups in the FCT, talked to groups of chiefs who control whatever group of people they control. I've been on social media, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. So I've been doing all the usual things, talking in churches, attending Catholic women's organizations or Anglican, anywhere where I find electorates in large quantities, big numbers, I go there and talk to them. It's because I want them to know that it's not going to be business as usual. I'm offering them a different kind of leadership, more credible, more accessible, definitely more competent, results-driven and result-oriented, not the usual take me there and let's see what happens, not that.
I'm curious, what's the level of acceptance, or how would you rate your acceptance level before the traditional institutions that you've visited?
Well, you have to bear in mind that I have been in the FCT politics for a while, so I'm not new to them. So I've been interacting with a lot of these people for several years. So it's just that this time I'm actually a candidate, whereas the other times I was aspiring to be a candidate. So a lot of them know me well already. They're aware of my capacity. I do quite a few things in the community when it needs doing. For instance, I just took a water project to a village in Kwali called Dangara, and obviously I didn't start that process as a candidate. It was something I would have done anyway, even if I wasn't. If I find that there's a problem somewhere, they get in touch with me, I go and do the best. So I am sort of known in the grassroots. So I was trying to campaign more to the elites because they come and go in the FCT, but the grassroots pretty much stays the same.
Well, we'll talk about your plans for the FCT, but I'm curious as well. Mm-hmm. You've made several unsuccessful attempts to be candidates for certain political parties. Tell us about your experience.
My introduction to politics in the FCT was on the platform of AMPP, and I was just thrown in the deep end. As I joined the party, I became their candidate with 2-3 months to the election. And if you look at the results, it was very, very close in spite of the fact that I was opposition. And the general belief is that I won that elections. The court asked us to repeat certain parts of it when I complained that PDP did not win. And we dragged that on and on for almost a good year, because the truth was that as much as the president he wanted his party senator in the FCT, it wasn't that easy to take away from me. And those days, we just had paper cards that you just stamped on the back. So even when we were told to repeat some of those places, they would print new cards just to prevent the people of that area from voting for me. Anyway, cut a long story short, after almost a year, I think by December of that year, I made an announcement that everybody knows I didn't lose, but it's time to put this whole thing to rest. And subsequent to that, every time I have run, even when they tell you that a man and a woman should not go to runoff, if they need to, you give it to the woman, they will still insist. I think it became clear over time to ministers, incumbent ministers at the time, that very strong senators will not work for them, because the minister has to work with the senator, and they obviously need more amenable ones. Very difficult senators, they have conflicts. So I would run. Sometimes the difference between the government candidate and myself would be 6 votes, 4 votes, things like that. And it was clear, even when I campaigned to the people, they tell me that, Madam, you know, we are supporting you. The problem is from the top. So by the time we got to 2018, I decided, you know what, the country is, as long as the establishment keeps bringing out people who do not work for the people, things are not going to improve. And I also feel that I can't complain about the people themselves, because some of the primaries actually don't even take place. Like in 2019, the primaries didn't happen. Just pick a candidate out of a hat. So you can't blame the people for not supporting you. But I'd also reached a point where I felt that the direction the country was going did not please me. And I thought I wanted to do other things with my life. Nobody can say that I have not tried my own bit. And I felt it was time for other people to contribute if they want the country to change. So I was planning on relocating, that's the truth. But there were certain interventions, I would say fate, so that delayed that. And in the meantime, other parties like NMPP, Labour Party, a few of them now decided that they wanted me to be their senatorial candidate. And at the end of the day, I opted to go with Labour Party because they also met my conditions. And I went to primaries and won the primaries this time because I was unopposed. And there was also no intervention or interest, or you know what I mean. The process was allowed to take place and take its course.
I heard you talk about a strong candidate and the concerns about the minister working with a strong senatorial rep. What does that mean?
It means that anybody you make minister of FCT, there's only one senator of the FCT. And you have to also understand that the Senate is the equivalent of the
Houses of Assembly.
State House of Assembly for the FCT. So the truth is that the minister needs to work closely with the senator. So there are sometimes things the minister wants to do and the senator will say, no, that doesn't work for my people. I know that many years ago back, somebody who worked for one of the ministers at the time was complaining that the senator was making a lot of trouble over some levy they put on the school. I think it was only 3K, but he made so much fuss over the 3K that there was no peace. They just decided, look, this is not worth the hassle. They removed the 3K because... And in the past, other senators, when a minister wants to demolish a community, they will insist that the certain conditions must be met before you can demolish. So it depended.
But that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is a good thing. But as
and that's what you stand for.
Yes, that's what I stand for.
But you feared that you had not been given this opportunity because no minister would want you taking that kind of position. Exactly.
And as things progressed, the ministers now opted for more pliable senators because the earlier ones were not that way. And it was clear that you had to, the minister isn't appointed, he's not elected by the people. So they're not primarily his focus. But the senator is. So whenever there's a problem, obviously they'll go and complain to the senator, him or her, and then he would have to intervene and say, no, this cannot work, my people cannot meet this must happen. So over time, they've gotten weaker, more amenable senators. And Senator Duda has been in the Senate now for 12 years. And I definitely am not, I'm not saying that I will not work with whoever the minister is, but I will definitely keep an eye on the interest of the people.
Well, since 2003, you've been trying to be, you've been in politics.
Yes, I have.
And you've tried on different platforms, not successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are concerns as to what role your gender may have played in you not getting the ticket. Congratulations on getting it under the plan from the Labour Party now. But do you think that your role, your gender as a woman, may have affected your chances of scaling through to becoming a candidate of the APC and the PDP at the time, which you're trying to run on?
Well, possibly. I did not, at the time, I didn't see it that way. I thought more my character was more the deterrent rather than my gender. I am a very straightforward person. I believe in honesty, transparency, and doing what's right. And that message is very clear. Even not being a senator, I think in 2015, because of the way my role in the party and everything, I was appointed FCT APC leader. And I've always been straightforward. I say what is right and tell them this is my stand, and I don't change it. So regardless, the other people can go and do, or the powers above me can decide that, no, we're doing it a different way. But I have made it clear that this is where I stand, because I have talked to the people, this is how they feel, and I don't change it. And I think that has been more of the deterrent than my gender.
So the political processes on the basis of gender have been fair to you?
Not necessarily.
You've not been discriminated against on the basis of gender? Of course I'm
discriminated against, even as APC leader, okay? They acknowledge my strengths, and when it's needed, they come for it. But immediately afterwards, sometimes they don't even introduce me as the leader. As soon as that problem is solved, they go, she's only a woman. Do you understand? I hear that she's only a woman so much. So when there's a problem and they come, I say, aha, it's now time for the woman to nurture you. I say that all the time because they come and say, oh, Hajia, there's a problem and you're the only one who can solve it. So, of course, my being a woman makes a lot of difference. It does.
Within the APC and the PDP, at any point did you decide to leave either party because of a reason like this?
In a PDP, I only joined truthfully because I was sort of, well, coerced is a strong word. Let's put it this way. I was sort of made to leave my party and join the same party that my husband decided to join, because in Nigeria, people didn't see that it was right for me to be in a different party from him. But I was in a different constituency, which I was in FCT, but I've always been in opposition. So I didn't last very long there because I felt gagged and not treated fairly, and all the things that motivated me to go into politics came from watching the things PDP was doing. So it didn't really make much sense for me to be there. So after a while, I decided, look, it's time for me to go back. It's not about the winning. I want a platform that I can express myself. And so I went back to opposition. And eventually opposition now became the winning party. And we were back to doing the same things that I had been complaining about.
Well, now you're in the Labour Party. And there are those who would say that, hearing your history would say the PDP, the APC, the same thing, and then the Labour Party, just like the presidential candidate of the Labour Party. And they would want to know what values drive your political convictions to choose which parties to belong to. So why the Labour Party?
Well, the Labour Party chose me as opposed to me choosing the Labour Party. My convictions have always been the same. But I find that you join a party thinking that they are going to partner with you to serve the people. And then when you get there and find that it's not about serving the people, I find it difficult to stay. My convictions have never changed. And as I've gone And I'm hoping, one of the things I find attractive about the Labour Party, especially in the FCT, and I suppose the same way everywhere, is that it's a fresh party. It's one where these ideologies can actually be, we can ingrain it from the beginning. PDP was already established, their ideology, and also the truth is that when all is said and done, most of the parties, there was no difference in ideology. They're the same. I thought APC was going to be different, but maybe in opposition, they're different. But once they won, they behaved exactly the same way the ruling party that we took out behaved. And I believe in law and order, fairness. I also believe that it doesn't matter how much you have. A society is judged by how the privileged ones treat those that are less privileged. And those have always been my ideals. It will not change. And in Labour Party, because of the way they approached me, and as we stand now, I'm sort of the leader of the party. I feel I can drive the process of the kind of, yes, in the FCT, of the kind of party that we have. One of fairness and justness, and where male and female are given a fair chance. So we go and win, and we rebuild the party and make it one where everybody knows that it has a definite ideology, egalitarian, no big people and no small people. And that is the kind of society I want to see. So it wasn't me that was changing. It was just that I didn't find the platform that was willing to sell these things. Most places you go, okay, there's some things, APC. We're supposed to have congresses, change our executives. But no, we want to keep the same one, even after 8 years, which is wrong. It goes against the laws of the party. So many things that are not right. And I can't do those things. I would rather not do. And that is me. I come to a meeting, tell you this is wrong. I will not do it. And I will not do it. If everybody else wants to do it, it's fine. Then let it be said that I said no.
It may be too early to call, but there are concerns that members of the APC and the PDP are likely to come to the Labour Party. I mean, even you started off somehow saying that they're all the same, regardless. And it could almost put your ideology in danger because you said you believed that the APC would do differently. That didn't work.
Well, I think that as Labour Party stands now, is the party of fairness, justness, competence. And as long as we define our ideology, we're not going to bend it for you. You come and fit into our ideology. And I think that was where APC got it wrong. APC came in with these ideals and then let people come in. If we say we are anti-corruption, you are a crook. You even have a case with EFCC. If you decide to join our party, we cannot give you leadership positions. All the ideology and all the things we said are wrong are still wrong. We're not going to bend them for you. And that's where APC started to derail. If they had stuck on white is white, black is white, these are the rules, then those that could not fit in, even we can't stop you from joining the party, but we can stop you from being the symbol of our party or be leaders in our party. If you're a bad person, you decide you want to join us, fine. But we're going to keep it in mind that before we now give you the money pot to hold, we remember that you stole the last one. You understand what I'm talking about? And I'm hoping that is where Labour will be different. We will define our ideology, and then anybody who comes in knowing that this is who we are.
You know, for the elections proper, I'm sure you'll agree with me that the FCT has always been a PDP state. It's always been a PDP territory.
No, I disagree.
The
FCT has always been an independent state. Now, let me take you through the election.
I'm talking about the results.
Yes, let's take the results year by year. Let's start with 2003. Okay? 2003, you cannot say it was, in spite of the fact that it was PDP, that was taken by force, or else you will not have the senatorial election go on for almost a year.
No,
okay, let's go to
the eventual result.
Okay, eventual result. Let's go to 2020.
The eventual result was a PDP win.
Yes, because the PDP was ruling. Now, let's go to the next year. AMPP won. And when AMPP won, they won by a huge margin, not by a little. A technicality was found that some small party, I can't remember the name of the party, was not on the ballot, okay? And the election was annulled. Remember, I was part of that process. As I said over and over again, I said, AMAC, especially where the bulk of the voters are very independent-minded people. They vote how they want, not how they wish, how anybody wishes them. Hear me. And that year, I said, if you repeat the election 100 times, they will still vote against PDP 100 times. And I want you to check these things. The elections did not take place on the day they were supposed to take place. They were supposed to be, the date for a new election was to be announced. The next day, it was said that the elections had been done. Remember, we didn't have VVAX then. So PDP was in government. PDP still took the state. Now, look at APC. The truth is that people in the FCT vote for people most of the time. They don't vote for party.
No, I know where you're going with this. Mm-hmm. When I said the PDP, it has always been a PDP territory. It's because the results have always shown that the PDP has voted for presidential candidates, that the FCT has voted for presidential candidates in the PDP.
Yes.
Voted for senatorial candidates in the
PDP.
PDP. Even the House.
Yes.
PDP.
Yes.
So you understand where I'm going with this.
Okay, let me tell you where I'm going.
The question I was going to ask you is,
yes,
the Labour Party is becoming a popular party now.
Yes.
But bearing this in mind, the popularity of the PDP and the sort of consistency over the years, what chance do you stand?
It's not consistent. Let me tell you what it is. At the end of the day, we're given a lime and an apple. It's always been two race. And also, let me tell you, the word on the streets has always been, and still is, that the incumbent senator ensures that the person that runs against him is always worse. I voted for the incumbent senator last election because I live here. You've given me two candidates. I'm going to choose one. And he was head and shoulders better than the one that we in my party brought out. And it's always been the case. We go to an election with two people. And I assure you that most people in the FCT, that's what they do. They're not looking at the party. They don't care. Even in the villa, all the polling units will vote against if that's not the person they want. So at the end of the day, had it not been that I'm running, so there's a third choice, I assure you, even I would vote for Senator Aduda. That's the truth. Because we're a literate electorate, we're not focused so much on the party. We're focused on the candidates much, much more. This is the one time I think we are more party-oriented. And the other thing that's always worked for PDP is that the bulk of the votes, Southeasterners, fine, as many of them that are always PDP, except now.
As a former wife of former secretary to the government of the Federation and someone who was very popular because of the annulled 1993 election by Babagana Kingibe, what does that name add to your political portfolio and your chances?
In the FCT, very little, because even when I was married to him, it didn't change anything. If it added so much, I wouldn't be losing by a vote or two in the primaries. I would have gotten the ticket. So in the FCT, I'm not saying nationally it's not a credible name, but in the FCT it carries very little weight.
So what's fueling your confidence now going into the elections that you would win this election?
The years of hard work in the FCT, the years of being the go-to person when people are in trouble, the years of association with the tribal leaders, so to speak, the fact that always I feel that I have people, actual definite things that should happen in the FCT. I challenge any of the other candidates to come and discuss theirs with me. So those, I mean, of course, leadership belongs to God. He gives it to whomever he wishes, when he wishes. But the chances are very, and also the truth of the matter is that we're tired of PDP and APC, and Labour Party is a fresh alternative. Let's try it. The other day I was talking to a young man who's from the north selling, this was long before my posters hit the street, was selling phone accessories. And somebody asked him, are you obedient? And he said, I don't think so. I don't know what that is. But the person was struggling to talk to him in English. So I said to him in Hausa, because I speak Hausa, Yoruba, and Igbo fluently. I said to him, there's a presidential election coming up. Who are you voting for? Who are running? He said, Atiku and Tinubu. I said, and who are you voting for? He said, none of them. I said, so who are you voting for? He said, Labour Party. I said, how can you vote for a party you don't know the president's name? He said, I know his name, and he told me his name. And I said, what about in the FCT? Do you vote here? He said, yes. I said, who are the people running? He said, I don't know, I don't care, but I'm voting for them. I said, how can you vote for people you don't know? He says, well, I know the alternative. I want to try this. That's what he said. Then I said to him, do you know, I mentioned my name. He said, yes, I know her. I said, do you know her personally? Because I was talking to him. He said, no, I don't know her personality. I don't know her personally. I know of her. So I said, well, she's running. He said, well, that's good. At least one person we know. Then later on, I gave it some thought. I said, he'll think I'm dishonest if I don't own up to being her when my posters come out. So I owned up that I am so person. So he said, oh, if you are, I have some issues to talk to you about. And he tabled those issues. So what I'm trying to say is that the truth is that people need some sort of alternative. People need hope. People don't give up just because what you have is not working. You look for a way to find something that could and might work for you.
So from your story, it would seem that this young man wants to vote for an alternative, the Labour Party, likely across board.
Yes.
Just because it's an alternative.
Yes, because he doesn't want... No, remember that this was in June, before we were allowed to campaign.
Oh, great. No, where I'm going with this is the concern of the bandwagon effects in the elections, where many uninformed voters would vote for perhaps the PDP and the APC because they are familiar with that, and then go on to vote across board, I mean at the presidential level, and then go on to vote across board at other levels, just because it's the PDP and the APC. And then it would seem now that if that happens with the Labour Party, it could be the same thing regardless of who the candidates are at the different levels. That's a problem, isn't it?
Well, you see, in the truth of the matter is that at the grassroots, people are very concerned about who their National Assembly members are, at least in the FCT, because that's all they have in the FCT apart from local government. They don't have a governor. So that is important to them. So that is what they are most of the time, more focused on in the grassroots. So he is saying, we all know each other. Senator Aduda is not new. Honorable Zachary Angulu is not new. I am not new in spite of the fact that I've never held any office. So the people who are voting for us know who we are. And before, if you take out Haji Ireti and she's not the candidate on one of those two platforms, then there's no platform for you to even decide that she might work for me. But this time is different. And I think that they're not just voting for us because they're just voting for an unknown alternative. That may be so for the presidential, but even on the presidential level, it's not so. We do know them. Even at the grassroots, we do know them. We have an idea who they all are.
So you're confident that beyond the FCT, that it would seem that the people at the grassroots are aware of who to vote for beyond the president and perhaps the governor?
Well,
individuals, not parties, individuals. They know these individuals that they would vote for.
I can't tell you about the gubernatorial, but the presidential and national assembly, and also I can only speak for the FCT in the National Assembly elections, but for the presidential, the truth is that we have had a PDP government nationally. We've also had an APC one nationally. The truth is, they have not served our needs as a nation. That is the truth. If you're talking about parties, they have not. And things are bad enough that the average young person, and when I say young person, I mean, let's even stretch it to 40 and under, they need something different. That's the truth. And Peter Obi offers that hope that elect me and I will be different.
Well, we'll talk about Peter Obi when we get there, because his presidential candidacy is something that's really pushed the Labour Party to where it is now. But the FCT will be 43 next month. I mean, it's a concern as to whether the FCT is where it should be at 43, especially being a federal capital. Or is there something missing? You know, I asked you because I recall that in one of your interviews, you said that there are lots of legislations and policies that are meant to be put in place to guide the FCT. Unfortunately, they are not in place.
That's true. And FCT certainly is not where it should be. We don't have public transport system. This is the capital of the nation. There's so much that we do not have. In Maitama, where I live, that's as elite a neighborhood as you can get. Children sit on the floor in the schools, in some of the schools. You can imagine what's happening in Nyanya or Jikwe. So it's definitely not an exaggeration to say FCT is a long way from where it should be. Maitama, Abuja, City Center, all those places look properly developed. If you cross the road from Maitama, just cross that big road, someplace called Nikon Junction, you enter a neighborhood called Gishiri, you wouldn't believe you're still in the FCT. You go to Nyanya, the same thing. I can go on and on and on. So development hasn't gone to all those places. We've just kept it all in one small radius, that's all.
And what's the reason for this? Is it because of the, so what you called the poor representation of the FCT with regards to the number of perhaps senators or members of the House, or is it the persons in power that have failed to address these issues?
I think the persons in power have failed to address the issues. Even as it is, FCT has two budgets. Has an FCT budget, has a national budget. I'm sorry, FCT could do much better with better representation.
So what exactly do you bring to the table with regards to addressing some of the problems in the FCT? You've identified transportation, you've identified education. So what would you do to address this too, as a federal legislator representing the FCT? Plus, what else does the FCT need?
Oh, the FCT needs better housing. As it is now, you should see the rents go haywire. Everybody else. FCT needs to open up. It needs to spread out. If you look around, we're all choked up in the middle, but there's a lot of land all around. It's 8,000 square kilometers. So at the end of the day, FCT is quite big. Then we need better health service. Please go to the hospitals. I have been to somewhere. The maternity ward is not that there was no light. The light bulb had burnt out. And when I offered to buy some, they said, oh no, you cannot accept these things from people, so to speak. And my attitude is, as long as there's light, doesn't matter where the light bulb comes from. If you had light bulb, you would have put it. So there's a lot that is wrong. For instance, look, the mandate secretariats they're the equivalent of commissions. It's been shared in a manner that you say a certain number of people must come from specific zones, southwest, southeast, south, whatever. Now, instead of bringing those people from outside, and in the FCT, there's any zone you want. You can find them here living in the FCT who have lived here for years, who know what the issues are. There's no point in you bringing a mandate secretary for agriculture who doesn't even know where Kwali is. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because he came from some other state to take that job. So the whole structure of how FCT is being run, and it's not that it's legislated that way, no, it's just It's nobody's business.
Yeah, so some say that it's largely because of the lack of working relationship between the minister and the Senate, the senator and the House of Reps members. And the reason for that is because they belong to two different parties.
That's not true. This particular minister, because we in the APC accused him of always being very pro-Aduda. He has a very good relationship with him. Anything he wants, he does it. He told us that, sorry, I have to work with him.
So what sort of legislation has that collaboration brought out to hate the FCT?
The minister, the legislation has to come through the National Assembly. The minister doesn't create legislation.
I'm talking about Senator Aduda. I mean, he's had a conversation. He's had a series of conversations with the minister. You say they work together.
They do work. So every minister has to work with the senator.
So you would expect that they'd come up with something that would go to the National Assembly and in turn translate to sort of development for the FCT.
Only if they wish it. If they don't wish it, if that's not their focus, then they will not. There's been there's somebody who was complaining to me about a certain health fund that all the states access and we don't. And I said, why don't we? He said, because, madam, we need certain policies to be signed and passed, and we don't have them. And I said, why don't we have them? He said, because the people in the National Assembly, the Senator and the House of Rep member, haven't written it and passed it. And I call those things housekeeping policies. So it's not as if the other members are going to say, no, we're not going to pass them. It has nothing to do with them. They would if they got them. So anything that the minister has a good working relationship with the senator just goes to show you that if things are not being done, it's not because they're not working well together. They're just not being done because they're not being done, period.
Do you have ideas of perhaps pieces of legislation that you believe that you would propose for the FCT? Do you have that already?
Oh, yes, several.
Would that include the status of the FCT? Because I know you're concerned about that. You say it's not been according to the level of status of states as
but it's never going to be. It's the policies that will make it. That's how come you will treat it like a state. It's not a state, but it's to be treated like a state. So meaning that if you put in the right policies, you should be able to access a lot of things. Am I making myself clear?
What sort of policies are you referring to?
For instance, that health policy that I was talking to you about, if that was in place, we could have accessed that health fund. I have to be there to see the details. For one thing, education. I don't see why not. Before FCT became the capital, there were no secondary schools here. So you can even imagine this whole area. So you can imagine the state of education in the FCT. There's a lot that can be done, but we have to look at it. Even employment. Let's look at employment in the FCT for young people. Every ministry is located here. Most parastatals are located here. You would think that the youth of FCT should be in heaven in terms of getting jobs, but they're not, because it's nobody's business. But I'm sure if the senator of the FCT tells a few ministries that, hey guys, you are here, so if you are employing X amount of people, a certain amount should go to the FCTU. It creates some sort of security.
Residents or indigenous people?
No, residents, everybody, indigenous and residents. We're all the same. As long as you are here, you live here, you were born here, however you want to define an FCT resident, then you're entitled to.
I don't know if the indigenous people of Abuja would agree to that because, you know, they've recently been complaining about, it's been louder anyways, it's always been there, but it's louder now. But their lands are being reclaimed. They feel like they're being treated like second-class citizens in the FCT. So what would you do differently?
I would look at how to make concessions for them. The lands were taken through whatever laws that created FCT as the capital. If they may say that they haven't been paid their complete compensation, but it's very unlikely that I can reverse that whole process that made the Federal Capital Territory the capital of Nigeria. But as I sat with some young indigenous people, and they were saying, okay, fine, we know we can't stop people from coming into the capital. It's become the capital of the nation. But certain concessions need to be given to indigenous people. And I asked them, like what? maybe an educational scholarship fund, considering that part of the reason they're not competing with everybody as well is because maybe they're not as educated. They spoke to me about a tourist village, something that will always depict their culture, even when there's no sign of it anymore. We also talked, and the other thing I talked to them about was integration. I know that it is my dream to see all these ministries that you have choked up in the center here, move them to the area councils. Why should they all be here? If they must be cited in Abuja, I don't think they should all be in FCT. But if they must be, some should go to Abaji, some to Kwali, some to Gwagwalada, some to Kuje, some to Buari. What does that do? It opens up Abuja.
All right. Well, just let's go into the presidential election now. You know, as politicians say, the jungle is maturing. We're counting weeks to the election now, and over 50% of campaigns have now been concluded. What's your take on the presidential election so far, especially considering the state of the polity at the moment?
Well, my opinion is that people want a change and they're determined to get one. The truth of the matter is when the NSAS and all the youth protests and everything happened, you know, a lot of people said, take it to the polls. And they're now taking it to the polls. And I think that the results of this election will shock the people who think that the status quo will remain. It will not.
You think it will be a shock in 2023?
I think it will be, the results will be shocking.
Now, do you think that, from what you've seen, that Mr. Peter Obi of the Labour Party has gained that level of popularity?
Well, he has. I think he has. Also, the other parties really, in my opinion, have taken the nation for granted. They really have not gone to a lot of trouble to say, okay, guys, we know you're upset. Here are some viable and strong alternatives. They haven't done so.
And I've seen you move about with him.
Yes.
And clearly you are at the forefront of this election. But what do you know about Mr. Peter Obi that stands him out from the crowd?
Well, I didn't know him before I started interacting with him in the Labour Party, but what I have gotten to learn about him, he's fair, he wants things to work, he's not egotistical in that I have found that a lot of people who become presidents want to arrogate more and more power to the center and themselves, which in itself is one of the problems the nation is having. He's not like that. He doesn't care. As long as something is going to work, it doesn't necessarily have to be under him. So things that need to be done, even if it removes some powers from him, he's not going to say no because you are diluting his powers. I've also found him to be a hands-on person, takes responsibility for things that need to be done. He's not going to say, oh, well, they didn't do it, it's Terry's fault. No, none of that. So as I have interacted with him more and more, I've come to see that he is a viable leader for this time that we're in so much trouble. And don't be deceived, we are in trouble as a nation.
Now, while he is getting endorsements from the Southwest, there are concerns that his people in the Southeast have not given him endorsement. In fact, those who are perhaps really close to him have come out to say that they don't think that he will win this election, that he should not bother. You recall that Arthur Eze, who many describe as a very prominent person in the Southeast, as well as his own governor at the moment, Chukwuma Soludo, do not seem to support him. What does this mean?
Well, did you hear the reason that Arthur Eze and Chukwuma Soludo gave, that he should not bother to run so that Chukwuma Soludo can finish becoming governor in Anambra and then become president of Nigeria? What they think doesn't really matter. When Peter Obi goes to the Southeast, as the results of the election will show, the people of the Southeast think he's a viable president. The average man on the streets in almost all the states of the Southeast are pro-Peter Obi. They're all obedient. So if one or two leaders want the status quo.
So if he's failed to get the endorsement of one or two leaders in his place, but has got the endorsement of one or two leaders in the Southwest, does that not count as well?
Well, I see the same way. What really matters is the masses. What do they think? When I looked at the ACT rally, I saw a lot of young people come out. And that, for me, that carries much more weight than one person saying, I think, yeah, it carries some weight. After all, when in 2015, when we were running, and certain people came out to endorse APC, and we were happy about it, but it still has to translate into votes. And where Peter Obi has the upper hand is that the youth of this country, all over, actually believe that APC and PDP are not seeing the problem and therefore are not prepared to solve them.
But then the APC and the PDP argue that he doesn't entirely have a big chunk of the youth population on his side. In fact, they've gone to show their strength in their rallies and show the youths march in their favor to suggest that they still do have the youths, and Peter Obi all he has is social media.
I have been in both parties. The truth is that Peter Obi's support is completely organic. Nobody in any of the places that we've gone to has been given a kobo to come out. Now, if all those people at their rallies were organic, then their responses would show they're not passionate, they're lackluster. I've been in this politics for a long time. There are times when some of my supporters will tell you, Madam, I dey come. They are gathering people in so place and they are giving us so amount, make I go collect. So we know how these things are
But then
done.
that's also a problem, isn't it? Because seasoned politicians, if I may use that word, say that this is still a largely money-driven political process we're running. You heard what the Chief of Affair Babalola said, that the election will be won by the person who has the most money to spend.
I disagree. This time around, it will not be that way. Things are actually different. This time, okay, even look at Osho. Do you really think that the person who spent the most money was the one who won? Not necessarily. Even if you look at Anambra, do you think the person who spent the most money was the one who won? That's why I'm saying that the establishment, in quote, is not really seeing that things have changed, especially among the young people of this country. They have reached the point where they have to do something. And the first point of doing something is the election.
With the new electoral law in place and INEC's innovations, the BVAS and the electronic transmission of results, what impact do you think this would have on the elections?
It makes the elections definitely freer and fair. Also has generated more confidence in the electorate. I personally feel that when people come out to vote for me on election day, the votes will be much harder to manipulate than before. So I know that the BVAX has really, really created more confidence in. Before, when you tell people, go and vote, I beg, madam, my vote no go count. Do you understand? Nobody tells you that anymore, because your vote will count this time, and we will see a difference.
As an individual, as someone running for Senate to the FCT, are you concerned about vote buying? In the FCT, we've never really been, vote buying is not a major in my constituency. It may be, I'm sure it happens in other states, but in the FCT, no, because the bulk of the voters, where 50% of the votes reside, and I would even go as far as saying 75%, because you add Buhari, they're voters like me and you. It's never been possible to buy those voters. What used to happen, I think, when people manipulate the votes, is when the results leave there and go to the collation center where you have, it's in the charge
or the care of one or two people that you can give money to, then you can change the result sheets, because all the result sheets are usually mutilated with numbers changed everywhere. But with the uploading of the results straight from the polling unit, what are you going to change? But actually buying votes at the polling units has always never been the case here. You can probably do that in the rural areas, but how many votes are there? Very little.
I think I should ask you this question. I mean, belonging to a party that does not give shishi, how are you able to fund your election bid?
Funding for election is in the FCT even from before was never about giving shishi. It's about logistics, infrastructure, posters, billboards.
No, that's
all
part
these,
of funding. So
no,
I mean,
no, that's not giving shishi. Giving shishi is when I come and give you money for your support and your vote.
no, there's also that mobilization aspect of things.
Well,
But most importantly, how are you able to fund your campaign?
how am I able to fund my campaign? I have some donations. I have my own little bits of 10 kobo, and lots of people's little bits and pieces put together, and I've been able to fund it.
All right, just before we go, I'd like to get your take on the 2023 general elections and your concerns, perhaps advice, because like I tell most of the guests that come on my show, we will have a new set of voters in 2023. INEC's recent data shows that at least 36% of the voters are new.
Yes.
So what do you have to say to those, to that group of voters who perhaps are deciding to vote because they are either now eligible to vote or they are better informed to vote?
I'll tell them what I always tell everybody. Their future is in their hands. As Hausa people will say, they're holding the knife, they're holding the meat. They can cut it every which way. But if you do not participate and you do not vote the way you know you should vote, you do not vote wisely, then you cannot complain about things going forward. So that's what I'm going to say to the voters.
Are you as concerned as other politicians about the security situation going into the elections?
In certain parts of the FCT, but generally I think FCT is secure enough. In some parts of Kuje and Abaji, where there's a little bit of terrorism when we border certain places that are unsafe, yes, those places would be a bit difficult, but the bulk of the FCT should be safe enough for the elections.
Mrs. Ireti Kingibe, thank you very much for your time on Political Paradigm.
Terry Kume, thank you for
having me. And I wish you well. I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to this upset that you believe will happen, kicking out who they describe as the FCT landlord, Senator Philip Aduda, and taking over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's time for
much.
a change.
I wish you well.
Thank you.
I wish you well.
Thank you.
Well, that's all the time we have on Political Paradigm. I've been speaking with Mrs. Ireti Kingibe, senatorial candidate of the Labour Party for the FCT. Catch this episode and others on YouTube or channelstv.com. Remember that the elections are just weeks away. Be prepared to vote, collect your PVCs, and make the right decision. I'm Terry Ikumi. Goodbye.